Good evening, everybody. I'd ask everybody to please rise. And I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you, everybody. At this time, I'd like to open up a public hearing for the purposes of discussing the canvassing and solicitation bylaw that will be presented at town meeting. Is there anybody in the audience that's here to discuss the canvassing and solicitation bylaw? Okay, that was a quick public hearing. Okay, nobody here to speak on that. I'll just pipe up and say that this is something we've been working on for a while, and we would ask the town to support this. This tightens up some of the rules on solicitation, blanket solicitations by companies coming into town. This doesn't stop the Girl Scouts, from selling cookies, the Boy Scouts from selling cookies, or political organizations, or religious, none of that. This is for business profit companies showing up and doing a blanket canvass of the town. The police department will have a little bit more control over who's in town and who's not in town, and so that'll be some of the more information will be presented at town meeting. So, that being said, at this point, I close the public hearing. It's 7:05. Would I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Moved. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Mr. Fowler?
No, not on the motion. I thought I might ask a question on this.
Oh, all right, well, we're discussion, so if you want to ask a question.
Just on the fee process, does that cover the Girl Scouts and all of it?
No, it's for
Okay.
business profit companies only.
It's for
Yeah.
profit.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
You're welcome. Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, hearing is now closed. Next thing we'd like to get to is, Peter Durkee here yet? No? Okay, so I'd ask the Powers and Sullivan accountants to come on up and give us a presentation on our audited financial statements.
Good evening. My name is Renee Davis. I'm the partner on the audit engagement. With me tonight is Romina Mamelli. She's the senior who's here day to day during the audit, doing a lot of the work that ends up getting reviewed before the reports get issued. But Romina has been part of the audit now for a number of years, so we thought it was important for her to join in with us. What we'd like to do tonight is we're here to discuss the fiscal 2012 audit that's been finalized for a bit now. So there were 3 reports issued: the single audit report, or the federal expenditures, the financial statements, and the management letter. What I'd like to do, if you don't mind, is walk through the status of the management letter first, and then we'll go into the financial statement overview and open that up for some questions. So this year's management letter, what we do is we address all of the comments that we had in the prior year. As you know, we sort of follow up and see if something was resolved or if it's still an ongoing issue. And one thing I do want to make sure I mention from the management letter is there were no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies noted in your audit. So there was nothing that accounting standards actually require us to put in writing to you because of their significance. Everything that's in here, really, they're things that we think you should be aware of. There are areas for operating efficiencies, controlling efficiencies, and increasing your internal controls, but nothing that we found was going to keep your financial statements from being accurate. With that said, I know you've actually had the Department of Revenue came in and did an internal control report. You had a fraud risk assessment done this year, so you've had a lot of looks at your internal controls, which is a really good thing. And we do look at that and consider that as part of our audit procedures. You had a few comments from the prior year. So fraud risk assessment's one that's been out there for a number of years that is now resolved. You had that done last June. I read that. It looked like a nice report with some good suggestions. The whole point in the fraud risk assessment, of course, is that's your fraud risk assessment, not what we do from an audit standpoint coming in, but your look at yourself. So although you did hire a consultant to do it, you need to make sure that you sort of stay on top of that and consider the results of that. It's always sort of a cost-benefit analysis to say, we assume some risk, and we want to make sure we have controls in place to mitigate that risk whenever it's feasible.
when we rank those risks, and, well, the consultant ranks those risks, probably high, moderate, and low, do you increase your scope on any of the high-risk items?
We consider it when we have to do a fraud risk assessment from our standpoint, and ours is probably a little bit more focused on the financial statement level, but we absolutely do consider that to be part of our planning. So we look at that as we're doing our fraud risk assessment.
The key message to management is make sure that we follow up on the risk assessment on each one of those components, but high, medium, and low, and take a look at them. You know, obviously the high you want to look at annually, the medium probably every 18 months, and then the low probably every couple of years, so.
And there, you consider sometimes there are some controls that you can put in place. I mean, sometimes in a small town, it's hard to always have segregation of duties, but you could have different types of reconciliations or mitigating controls that maybe wouldn't be that, cost prohibitive. So you do want to look at that. Also, if you have any significant changes, department heads or key people in any of those positions, you may want to revisit those departments on an ongoing basis. So it's not a stagnant document. It's something that should be sort of stay alive.
And any new processes that we put in place should have a risk assessment done on it.
They should.
Okay. All right, good.
So that one is, and that was a new one a few years ago. It's sort of everyone's kind of going through the process now. So it's a good one to get done. I think you'll find it very helpful. The second one that we've had in there that's been in there for a couple of years now, we want to talk about a little bit, is the water commitments and receivable reconciliation. And that one is unresolved. So as of last June, there was still not a process to record your water commitments, abatements, and receipts on the ledger and reconcile that activity with the detailed records of the water department. Since then, we've talked to the town accountant a little bit about what they've been doing. They have increased their processes a little in that they're now the water commissioners, I guess the water commissioners are signing off on abatements and providing those to the town, but they still don't have that completely in place. The risk there is that something could, they're basically taking the balance of the water department and putting it on the ledger, as opposed to what you do with real estate motor vehicle, where you book a commitment from a source and receipts tied to revenue, and then you're reconciling to the detail. So there's a risk that something could go wrong there.
Well, there's a risk that residents could challenge their bill and say, it's not correct, and, what do we have to fall back on if there's no process there?
Well, the process that's missing is really you want to make sure that all the revenue that was paid actually made it into the town.
Right.
So, something could happen if you're not tying in receipts and abatements, something could get abated without having the proper authorization.
So it sounds more like the abatements rather than the additional charges?
Nope, you could have receipts that somehow didn't make it into the system, and you wouldn't catch that
Right.
in the regular reconciliation process. So it's still a recommended control. I know they're working towards it, but there are some glitches in the system. So I think the water department system for keeping track of their receivables, they're looking at improving that. So I know they're working on it, but as of now, it's still unresolved.
Would you suggest we get together, give them 3 months or so, meaning both sides of the ledger here, water and town accountant and treasurer, well, accountant, get back together with them maybe in 3 months and follow up to see what the progress is?
I think that would be a good idea. I know from the town side, we talked to them recently, and they're working on it. I don't know the status of the receivable system at the water department. So I know they were looking at new systems, and they're considering this when they're determining whether or not they're going to upgrade the system they have or go to a new system. So I'm not sure where they are and what their timeline is for that.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Sure.
it might make sense if we ask them to deliver us a plan within the next 30 days of how they're going to rectify that. And we can hold them accountable to that plan and see what we can do to help them.
Right, and I think that should come from the finance director, Mike, so let's see if we can get some communication out to both sides, and copy off to the Board of Selectmen, and Finance Committee for that matter too, Finance and Advisory. All right, good.
Okay, the next one from last year, there was some old authorized unissued debt that's been resolved. You rescinded that at town meeting. And the final one from the prior year was the audit of student activity funds. And that really was, they had an audit, I think the last time those were audited was 2009, I believe. They now have an audit scheduled for 2013. So really, MASBO, or the Mass Association of School Business Officials, recommends that they do that every 3 years. It was sort of a reminder. They hadn't done it in a couple of years, and they said, yep, we agree, and they're going to do that. They have a plan in place to do that for fiscal 2013.
And that comes from school committee?
The school department, so I believe it's
school
Yes, I
committee.
think that comes right from the school committee.
All right, great.
So, and for current year comments, there's 2 informational comments that are in there that we think it's worth talking about. Actually, I'll talk about the last one first, because that's the easy one. We wanted to make you aware of it, new Mass General Law that came out last year that allows towns to put money aside to pay for compensated absences. And I see that you have that on your
It's on the
upcoming
warrant.
warrant. So, good for you.
Try to book as many accruals as we can.
It's a liability that can really, it was growing in a lot of communities. It can quickly get out of hand. So anytime you can put money aside for it, makes you sort of aware of the liability when you're looking at your policies and how many days people are accruing. So it was informational in nature, and it will be resolved, obviously, for the upcoming year if that gets approved. The other one is sort of a big one. This is new accounting standards, which I feel like every time we come here, we're talking a little bit about what's going to change in the accounting world, but there are some new changes that are coming into play in the next couple of years that are going to significantly impact your financial statements, and we think it's worth making sure that you're aware of them. So the Governmental Accounting Standards Board has issued a few statements. One will come into play for 2013 that's going to pave the path for the next part of it. It's going to change your statement, your full accrual balance sheet. Change the name of it, change the layout of it. You're going to now have deferred inflows and deferred outflows. It's a statement of financial position instead of a statement of net assets. So nothing earth-shattering. The numbers pretty much will stay very similar in 2013. Come 2014 is where the real big changes come into play, where they're going to have you start accruing your unfunded pension liability. So that's something never been on here before. So you're paying your share, you're paying your required contribution every year to the retirement system. You've never booked a liability. It's always, for the past few years, we've had it in the back of the financial statement. So come 2014, you and everybody else, but it's going to show up as a big significant liability, as a deferred outflow on your financial. So you'll see what it is. It will show as deferred, but it will impact your bottom line and your full accrual financial statements. The other big piece of that is OPEB, which they haven't finalized yet, but that's coming next. So they will eventually do the same thing with OPEB.
When we get to those numbers on the footnotes, can you just point those to?
Certainly.
We
Yeah.
think we have it. Well, Stu and I will.
We were
I think-
digging.
Yeah, no, I think we've got the OPEB side, but it's even though we're paying on a cash basis to the pension fund, there's still a liability there?
There is a liability because there's an unfunded liability for both. So what you're
Right.
doing on the pension fund, you're paying your normal cost every year. So you're paying them what you have to for this year, and you're paying an amortization schedule on your unfunded liability.
Okay.
So you're paying your requirement every year, but there's still that other unfunded liability that legally you can pay over time,
Right.
but it's a real liability, and now it's going to show up.
This was bound to happen. It had to happen sooner than
gonna
later.
happen.
I think that we've been lucky because if this happened 5 or 6 years ago, we would have had a little bit more pain.
Yeah, they've been kicking the can down the road for a while on this issue.
They have, and what happened with OPEB is they obviously, unlike the pension system, with OPEB they had you start record because you're not paying that unfunded liability, so you're booking it. Same thing you would have to do if you didn't pay pensions, but that was illegal. Massachusetts requires the payment. So where you've been amortizing OPEB for a couple of years now the whole thing will end up coming on.
All right, yeah, we'd like to see what those two numbers are when we
Sure.
get there. Okay.
The other thing I just want to mention, so that's it for this year's management letter. We did also, last year we were here talking to you, you asked us about the school lunch department and take a look at school lunch department. We did go out there. There was nothing that ended up in the management letter. When we visited with the school department, we looked at the different schools and how they collect money, their receipt process. And they had recently, when we were there I think last June or shortly after we met with you, so close to the end of the fiscal year, they had started a process of reconciling their records, their internal balances to what's on the ledger. So we did make some verbal recommendations to them. There was nothing that we found that was a real weakness in their controls. They do obviously have to watch their budget is really, really close, and their balance was pretty close last year, so they have to watch that, and we think reconciling with a general ledger on a regular basis will help them to make sure they keep that on target. So
Overall, good report.
it's a good report. Good job. So the other thing I'd like to do, if you don't mind, is walk through the financial statements, take any questions, and just walk through the results of operations. So that's the big report, and I mention this every year, but I'll say it again. The only part of this report that belongs to us is the independent auditor's report. So they're your financial statements. Management takes full responsibility for them. We, based on our audit, have to give an opinion, and it's an unqualified opinion. So there was nothing that we found that said your financial statements would be materially misstated. So unqualified opinion really is the best that you can get on your audit. And then anybody who's interested in sort of the summary version of this, right after our audit opinion is management's discussion and analysis. And that summarizes the results of your operations. So if you're looking for a quick read and the numbers get confusing, that's sort of the summary that will point you where you want to go. But I will walk through, and I'm going to show you where the OPEB numbers are to sort of start you out. The first of the financial statements are the full accrual financial statements. And as we mentioned earlier, you're amortizing that OPEB liability over time. So I won't make you flip too much, but if you don't mind turning to page 11. That's your statement of net assets. And what you've booked so far for your OPEB liability is, first column, governmental activities. It's the 4.4 million, 4,397,146.
Okay.
So that's what you've amortized so far of that liability. So you're taking a piece of it each and every year. And obviously, there's a small piece that's over still in the business type activities. Light is paying theirs, but water has a share.
Okay.
So the light department has put money aside, and I think I don't know if you're going to start doing that, but as of 2012, the light department was putting money aside to fund their liability. That doesn't show up here. It actually is reported in the fiduciary funds. So they had a few $100,000 set aside. And in a lot of cases, that some of the utilities are, because they can afford to, they're fully funding that, so the liability doesn't show up.
We're looking to put 50 grand in the fund this year.
Good. And I'm seeing that there's more sort of motivation for communities to start funding, even if it's a little bit,
It's more a token principle to get this thing going.
Yeah.
to put something in there, and then as, one-time revenues come in, or any sort of dedicated revenue sources, I've seen people doing it in different ways.
Well, I'd like to see what the effect of 50,000 is spread over the 30 years. Should we look at?
Well, what will happen is, I will tell you, the actuaries, when they're doing your next valuation, can run the numbers for you.
Yeah.
So if you were fully funding it, obviously you would be able to use a much higher discount rate, because there would be a theory that you're investing that money and getting a good return on it. If you're funding nothing, then you're using the cash rate. So if you fund a significant portion, they can use a blended rate, and it makes the whole liability come down. So we've seen that happen. If it's insignificant, it's not going to make a difference. But they can easily plug those percentages in when you're having your new valuation done, and you can see what that will bring you. So that's the best advice I can give. There's several communities now that I have to say are partially funding, but the rates that they were using for cash rates were kind of aggressive anyway. So it really hasn't helped the liability, because the interest rates are so
It's
low.
just so low, yeah. Okay.
So it's a long-term perspective on investments, but it's still, you don't want to be unreasonable. And the other place that the OPEB liability shows up is sort of in the back of the report under other required supplementary information. So pages 58 and 59 have what we've started the trend information. And we break out the light plant because they are funding that, and they have a separate valuation done, so we have disclosures in there for both. But it tells you your whole liability is the $16.5 million, as you can see, and that was as of July 1st, 2010. So
Okay.
it's a big liability.
So-
But that's where we're starting. So as you can see, I don't remember what
Putting
happened.
50,000 towards it.
Is that question, is that, that whole liability is,
Boy, that's
Pays the
a,
administration.
yeah,
Yeah.
boy.
that's like a down payment.
Sure, go ahead, Jerry.
This is a fund basically in case the town had a failure. Is that the reason? I mean, we don't put it in with the anticipation of taking it out, do we?
No, but
So
what it
this
is,
this is in case the town went bankrupt or something, the money is there for the employees.
And
So-
what it is, because it is a real liability
Yeah.
for you now, but you don't have to pay it out until people retire. And that liability is always going to change, because it's an estimate
But
based
right now,
on
we sort of
trend
pay
rates.
as
life
we go.
expectancy.
Right
too.
now, you pay as you go. And right now, that's all you legally have to do.
Yeah.
So the only thing that's making you report this way is accounting standards.
But it's pointing out the effect on our financial statements and our financial position.
Right.
Yeah.
To know that, if you look at your books at a snapshot in time, and a net assets around 32 million,
Sure helps.
not really, because there's things off balance sheet commitments that we have going into the future. And that's the point of all this, is to point out that from a management perspective and other, and when we issue bonds, I mean, the investors will have to look at this stuff
They
to
do.
say, okay, what does it look like going forward? And the ability for them to pay us back. That has a lot to do with the disclosure and transparency and everything, so.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
So the 16.5 million, that is accrued 30-year accrual? Is that what
That's
that
the
number
total
is?
liability, and then they're amortizing it over
Over
30
30,
years.
okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Sure,
So,
go
if this is going to hit every community and every municipality, and so are the credit agencies going to take into consideration that, are they going to try to do some sort of a bellwether
So
to this to say?
here's what we've talked to them about this a lot, and what they say, they are certainly asking the question now. So when you have your rating calls, they're asking what you're doing about it. Do you have a trust fund set up? What's your liability? Do you have a mechanism to fund any of it? And they've told us that so far they don't think that has impacted, but they take it all into consideration. And it depends on what everybody else does. So, you could be paying 50% of the health insurance for your retirees, or you could be paying 90. So Massachusetts, legally, you can go from 50 to 90. Some communities were 50-50. Their liability, all other things being equal, would be lower than a 90-10 community. And sometimes it depended on what the plans were. So
Right. We're at 60-40, right?
So technically, we'd be the best of the worst.
So they're taking it into consideration, and they say they look at everything, and if everybody around you is fully funding and you're not doing anything, yeah, it could have a negative impact. But so far, I don't think that has been the
The old
case.
scale test model,
Okay.
And yes, you are 60/40.
See, she knows this stuff. But overall, so that's the OPEB and how that sort of impacts the financial statements. You really did, though, even taking OPEB into consideration, you had a good year. So your general fund had a very positive year. This year, was the first year that your real estate taxes went up. And when I was looking at these reports, I said, "What? They went up more than usual." But this was the first year your operating override for the school department came into play.
May I ask a quick question?
Sure.
So just so I'm reading the schedule of funding progress correctly, is this showing that our liability was at almost $29 million back in 2007 and has shrunk to 16?
Yes, and if you remember last year, we talked about this, the big difference in that was number of employees went down.
The number of employees went
Yep.
down.
So they look every time they're doing this, obviously, it's the number of employees, the number of retirees, the plans that you're offering, the healthcare costs, mortality tables. And anytime you have fewer employees, that makes it go way down. And that was the big change and I didn't go back to look to see exactly how that happened, but when you were comparing apples to apples from one valuation to the next, that had a big impact on it.
Would interest rates have an
Medicare?
effect on it?
They would, but I don't think they changed their assumptions on the interest rates that much. But yes, they would if they changed those. So if you, on your next valuation, ask them, because they will use, within a range, you sort of pick what you're going to have for assumptions on there. If you change that, it does have a large impact on your liability.
Renee, wasn't it the health insurance costs, that escalator has dropped a lot?
Right.
It has. I will tell you, in some communities, though, that didn't have as big of an impact as it did here. So I don't know what you were at before and because now you're 60/40, did you change?
No, we've been that way for a long time.
So it's just
but
maybe your rates are better than what they planned?
Rates have not gone up in the last 3 years.
So if they were anticipating with the first valuation for rates to rise at a certain percentage and they didn't, they changed their assumptions and that makes it
We were
change.
seeing 17-18% increases back then.
Right.
So maybe that's what's leveled out.
It could.
Having single digit
Right.
or less.
Yeah.
And it's, we have a few communities, not too many, but a few communities that are trying to actually fund it. And as you can imagine, if all of a sudden you think you're funding at a certain schedule, you have a new valuation done every 3 years, and it completely changes, it's really, how do you budget for that? It becomes really difficult. That we've almost had some communities just say, we're going to budget a certain amount that's really close to what we think, and we're not going to worry about those
I don't think
ups and
50,000 is
downs.
going to.
But at least you can say you have the
50,000.
trust set up and you have a little
It
bit of a
shows,
funding
it
mechanism.
shows
Oh, I know.
that management's aware of the issue. and that we're working towards a solution within our means. That's basically what, you know.
It does, and I have to say, a lot of communities are doing that. They say, okay, let's get the trust fund set up, because for a long time, you didn't even have a way to do that, but the law has allowed you to sort of do that easily, get the irrevocable trust set up, start putting money in, and then you have a way to be able to do that and get the process started. So there's the OPEB talk. The other sort of good thing, so general fund did really well this year. As I mentioned, school override went into play, which made real estate taxes go up a little bit, and your budget went up a little bit. So there was a little bit of a trend up in the general fund, but you had a good year. You turned back some money in revenues, you had some turnbacks in expenditures. So overall, the general fund turned back, I think it was about $940,000 that increased your net assets. So where OPEB only decreased it by 842, they had a little bit of an offsetting effect. Whereas all things being equal, if you didn't have that result in the general fund, your net assets we would expect to keep going down. You have some good capital grants. So the CPA money every year that comes in from the state is a real boost, because that's just extra money from the state that you get to use for capital purposes. It's not an operating grant, so that has a really positive impact, and that was between that and your ed grants that you got in capital grants, you had over $600,000. So both of those things had a really, really positive impact, which makes the whole picture look a little bit better.
Great.
The other, so community preservation, we know is about $2.9 million. Your reserves are quite healthy. That's something obviously that's an added benefit to the community. Stabilization, $1.2 million, and this is the second year stabilization is reported within your general fund.
Right.
So when you're looking at the general fund, you say, ooh, we didn't know we had that much money, it's that stabilization money is now in
I
there.
think I've asked you this every year you've come in, is how does our stabilization fund look? I mean, the recommended is 5% of operating expenses. Are we good?
You are good. You're within everything that they look for stabilization fund.
Okay.
The rating agencies will always tell you when they're looking at that they more look at your plan for it than anything else. So depending on what your policy is and what you want to have there, some communities are going to rely on that more and want to build up more. Some communities are building it up over time to use for a certain purpose, and you can do that too.
Right.
But with you, it's been kind of consistently building over time.
Yep. Okay, good.
Which is positive. The enterprise funds, really, I'm going to say, you budget them, so you hope that they're going to stay about even, and they really, really did. Not a big change in either of the enterprise funds. Overall, with a $14.5 million in net assets in the two enterprise funds, they only changed by $14,000. So that's almost, you couldn't make that happen. Yeah. But really, that's what you budget for. The water fund should be budgeted to recover 100% of their costs, and that's really what you do. So overall, a good year. I'm trying to think what the other major funds we had. CPA, we talked about. Highway improvement, we break that out because of its significance, and everything else shows up as non-major. This is the second year of reporting the non-major governmental funds. There's a note in the back that if you're curious about what's in that $2 million, it sort of breaks it out. But it's your gifts, your grants, it's other trust funds that are there to benefit the town, and no significant change there. But sometimes your grants will go up and down over time. What we did want to look at, what we'll talk about with the federal grants, is you got way less federal grants now. Most communities did, because that ARA money, that bubble of federal money that was in, went away. But you're still on top of, there's been no big reduction, no big hit here for you. So the state made up the differences that they had. It didn't have a long-lasting impact, which is the good news.
Great.
So anything else in the financial statements that you want to touch on? Questions?
I'm good. Anybody else? No?
I highlighted something, Dave, but it's more towards our warrant on page 9, and I don't know if what they're saying.
Page 9 on the report?
Yeah, and it's on the capital assets. And then the first paragraph after that, they're claiming that the finance committee cannot add a capital item to the warrant unless the capital improvement committee has voted on them. Is that a bylaw thing that we perhaps overlooked on? I mean, maybe we need to.
Where are you reading your?
Page 9
9.
after the bullet.
Under capital asset and debt
Yeah,
administration.
that last sentence in the
sentence
first paragraph.
And I'd have to look to see where that came from, because I don't know off the top of my head.
We changed that bylaw.
Okay,
It used to say that.
Okay.
So maybe this needs to be updated.
Yeah, we
Alright.
changed it,
Last year.
Yeah, so you,
We
your
had to
report
do it
is
last
last
year.
year or
We'll
the
update-
year
we'll
before.
update that.
We're okay with the warrant?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we are.
That's
Yeah, so you'd
Yeah,
have to.
we did that because
We couldn't get
we
CIP.
couldn't get quorums.
quorums, yeah,
Right.
okay.
So you'd have to change that.
So we
in
missed the
your-
change in the bylaw, so we'll adjust that. Was there anything else?
Well, there was also on the stabilization fund on the previous page, okay?
Yep.
Now, you've got, these funds can be used for general or capital purposes upon board approval, but isn't that town meeting approval?
It is town, you do need town meeting.
That's what it
You do-
should be.
You do need town meeting
okay.
approval.
Thanks.
Good catch, Gary.
The final report, if we could just talk about the federal grants, which, as I mentioned, there's fewer of them now everywhere. Wrong report. So this year, obviously, every year we go in and look at your federal expenditures. Part of the Single Audit Act, we have to do an assessment of all of your federal expenditures and select certain programs, a certain percentage of your programs to do compliance testing on. This year, special education cluster came in, which does a lot because of the significance of that program and the Ed Jobs program. So we go out, and that's why we come in the spring. We're usually doing the grant testing while the people are still here that are operating those grants, and we can actually go in and test to make sure they're spending and reporting and doing everything in compliance with the laws and the regulations related to those grants. The past 2 years, we had findings related to special education that are now resolved. So the findings related to time and effort certifications, some new requirements that I have to say, not uncommon. We had that in a number of communities, but the school department did take the steps to make sure that they are in compliance now with all of the time and effort certifications. So in both of those grants, we did not have any findings based on our testing this year, so clean opinion on that. And again, because the federal error money went away, your expenditures overall are about half of what they were the previous year. So, and there's some new accounting, regular federal regulations coming into play that may change that as well. So what they're trying to do right now is sort of change the threshold for major programs and for single audit, so it could adjust what testing is done and how it's reported in the future. So we're waiting for them to finish that.
You see that scaling back a little bit?
They did that once a few years ago.
Right.
What they'll probably do is, right now, if you spend more than $500,000, you need to have a single audit and testing done. I think they're gonna change that. They've played around with a number, I think it's gonna be about $750,000. So based on last year, you would be really, really close to even needing that extra testing done. It will drop a whole lot of smaller communities from even needing that extra audit work done.
Good.
So we'll see where that is. We'll
Saves us a
see where
little bit
that
of money.
goes. Yeah, it would save some time. I mean, it certainly, their intent is to not sort of pick on the small programs, to really focus their energies and the efforts on the larger federal programs to make sure they're in compliance.
All right,
So,
very good. Any
So-
other questions for our esteemed panel?
Thank you.
Always a bright light coming in here.
Great.
Appreciate
Thank
Love
it.
you.
having you guys.
thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Have a great evening.
Have a good
You
night.
too.
Thanks.
We have to have a vote to accept these.
Jan?
Let's
Copy
do
of
this.
that- one of those agendas.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a big group from Pond Street, and Peter's here too, so why don't we have a discussion about the Pond Street fence? Peter and I met earlier today, about 6 o'clock, and, Pete, you wanna come up? We'll put you on the hot seat. And so, Peter and I walked through it, and heading from town, the fence on the right, so that would be where there's no house, there's no view really, that high fence. The thought process was, and I don't know if you had asked the last time if we do anything with that particular side. What's the consensus from the group?
It comes down.
You want it,
Yeah,
Like to see the whole fence.
yeah.
you want it all down?
Yeah,
The
every bit.
animals are being caught in there as
Right.
well.
Well, there's one point there where the guardrail is, and then there's fence. That guardrail would probably have to stay.
The guide rail can stay. But there's and exactly the same arrangement on East Main Street, where Penbrook goes on the road.
Right.
Just a guardrail, no fence.
Okay. So what Peter and I were kicking around was, first of all, Peter found out that the guardrail that's there existing really needs to be enhanced because it's missing posts. The posts were never, all the posts weren't put in. And basically the strength it's rated for right now isn't really much, right? As much as it should
No.
be, you know,
And that's across from Mill Street.
yeah.
So it won't affect that guardrail, we'll just add more posts to shore it up more.
Mhm.
Yeah. And some of them are crooked and pulling out and,
It's not the best looking guardrail I've ever seen, that one there.
so the thought, and Peter and I were, again, kicking this around, was to remove all of the fencing. Well, the right, I understand you want that high fence on the right side out. We didn't really look at what we would have to put as a replacement if there's any additional guardrail, but where the short fence is, right up to where, like, kind of the bridge, I kind of felt like the bridge started, almost like a, you know, where the water was to remove all that low fence, and then all the high fence would go, but around that flume area, where that grate, there's a grate there, to box that in with the high fence, because we don't want kids jumping over. We want that up high. Again, this is all, I'm not an engineer, so we're gonna have to clear this with Peter's engineer. You know, Peter can give you a little bit more on that, but.
I've been trying to meet up with the engineer, and we haven't been able to touch base. I was on vacation 2 weeks ago. So as soon as he can get up here, I have some information about, you know, I know that the fence doesn't hold cars from going into the pond. I have some stuff here from the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, and it states about permanent bodies of water, judgment decision based on location and depth of water and likelihood of encroachment. So when I did talk to one engineer, he did say if it's a 3-to-1 slope, you don't need to put anything there. And there is some areas up near the Powers that we would have to put a guardrail.
That's a pretty good slope right there. The rest of it, that slope, it's no worse than the slope on West Main Street, where Pentucket Pond also goes under. If you're heading toward Groveland on the right-hand side, it's just the same. There's a slope, the height's about the same. The slope's about as steep. There's nothing there. Any car, anytime can drive right in. But bodies of water. Did you get the picture? The pictures.
I got your emails, but I didn't get pictures or.
These pictures right here?
Check out, pass them around, and
Right.
pick out the ones that don't belong.
But if I could get you right, Mr. Chair, you're saying that we're
already
feeling
looked
we
at
can take down a good part of the fence for the residents?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're gonna do something. There's no doubt about it.
I think
We're
that's a
gonna,
great idea, that you're using some common sense in doing that.
oh, yeah, we're gonna do
I
something.
Appreciate that. And I'm not, whatever you guys determine in public safety, I'm just gonna question about that little flume there.
Hmm.
The years that was open, I mean, a lot of people who lived in town and sat there and watched the alewives come up through there. I mean, I'm not, anything for you doing for public safety, but I can't imagine a 6-foot fence around that.
After the otherwise, the lamp rays
I
come
think
up.
we'd be worried about the toddler we have in our hand maybe, rather than the teenager falling in there.
In that group of pictures, there's pictures of a bunch of dams, and they're not in Timbuktu. They're within 15 miles of here, all Essex County. And the most common structure around the dams and the fish ladders. Some have nothing. Anytime you want, jump in. And the most common feature around a fish ladder or dam is pipe railing, 4 feet high. Niagara Falls has a 4 feet high pipe railing.
I don't even think that's 4 feet.
It might not even be.
Well, I mean, again, that's something we'll certainly, look into. My fear was, or my thought was, coming from the fishing game, if it's dark out at night, you could drive, if you're bending there, you're kind of leaning towards the right, towards the pond. You get, people could go in. I would want to see a guardrail, something to keep people from fading to the right and going in there. God forbid it's starting to get a little bit dark out and somebody's out there fishing and a car's coming that way, and not only into the water, but take out some people that are there fishing. So I think there still has to be a guardrail that would go from the existing guardrail all the way, whatever we decide around the flume area, but all the way down and eliminate the fence all the way down. So that, it just seems natural that when you're driving, you kind of want to bend to the right, or the road kind of goes that way. And I can see people just going, launching right.
You
I
do
can see it,
naturally
it's
wanna do
gonna
that. You know
happen.
why? 'Cause for 35 years, it's the most beautiful thing after a long day's work to come by and see the sunset.
Yeah.
As you drive. So you
yeah.
do tend to want to go that
Yeah,
way.
yeah,
Across the
yeah.
lake, it's a beautiful sight.
Right, yeah.
There's a nice picture of a sunset through the fence. It's in that group of pictures there.
People standing on the roof of their cars to take a picture of the sunset without the fence.
It's like painted by numbers.
So the thought process is Peter will do a little bit more research. We can do a little more research on what we would do with the flume area and come up with some numbers as far as where we would, as far as the guardrail. It's going to be expensive. I mean, I don't know. What was it? Almost like, what was it a foot, Peter? I mean,
It's $25 a foot.
yeah. So it's
What's that, galvanized?
Yep.
yeah.
Amesbury.
Yeah, that's.
I'm gonna go to Parks and Rec for a second.
one.
Well, I mean, as a non-parking rec, I used to run that area. There's no sidewalk from the flume down to Mill Street.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty hairy area to run.
Yeah.
Having a guardrail there is nice because if you see two cars that are coming, you could
On the
theoretically,
street.
you could jump the guardrail. You're not gonna jump
Right,
the fence.
right. We want some spots in the guardrail where it's open too, so that people can go in and fish. Peter was talking about doing a little more fill in there. What was the material you were going to use?
Rip wrap.
Rip wrap, because it
What
does
is
drop.
riprap?
It's kind of broad.
The big
6-inch minus, like rocks.
Yeah, there is some there already, but we'd have to add some more in some spots because it kind of falls off pretty quick.
You know, a guardrail, it's not the end of the world. It might be okay. It probably is okay. But among the group of pictures, there's a picture of Locken Road and Byfield. And you know what that is? That's a picture of what Pond Street should look like. And have a look at that. There's,
Which one is it?
They went to the extent of that there's a green guardrail, and that the guardrail just it kind of Falls Road picks up, and then there's I don't think they call them.
This particular one you're talking about?
Yeah, that's it. That's
Yeah.
Locken Road.
Yeah.
And it's the same here as our project. A concrete structure on each end. I'll call it a crash rail. I don't know what you call it. It's a combination guardrail and people rail.
Cement.
Along the bridge.
Yeah.
And
Well,
there's a few like that too. There's a few in Newbury, and there's
This is Amesbury. Yeah, it looks like.
That doesn't look cheap though. That doesn't look inexpensive to build though.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I see that 4-foot pipe. It says, many thanks to the Institution for Savings for donating, for supporting the restoration of, so they got some outside, looks like outside donations.
That's what that's Ipswich, and you
Is that
can see the
okay,
size of
okay.
that dam. It's a little bigger than ours.
Right.
And it's a pipe railing. You can't tell in the picture. It's 4 feet on one side. It's 3 feet on the other.
Okay.
And anytime you want, over the 3-foot side and into the fish ladder you go.
Right.
Pipe railing.
Right. All right, so let us, Peter, look into that also, and continue to, I know, Harry, give me 1 second, Harry. So let us look into, the pipe railing, let us look into the guardrail, let's get the engineer out there and let's get some pricing now. Because we definitely have to do something, it's a mess.
It's a mess, yeah.
The only other thing is though, from Parks and Rec perspective, the fabric on the fence, we may be able to salvage that and reuse that somewhere else.
We could I was thinking the same thing, maybe repurchase it for our projects that we have going forward.
Yeah, and there's and a lot of piping there that we could reuse, so we can recycle a portion, a good portion of that material.
Fence is expensive, so that.
Yeah, so if we use it in other areas in town, so we're kind of, offsetting, kind of recycling there, so.
If you want to take it down with volunteer labor, you'd be amazed how many people, when I mentioned to them.
Yeah, I want to stay away from the volunteer labor, I really don't want to do that. I appreciate the help, but again, we wouldn't want to do that where we're insured, and we've got, Peter's guys kind of working on that, so.
Okay, but if it was a possibility, Peter, you could supervise, and we have the amount of guys who can't wait to get their hands on the Sawzall.
Yeah, you're talking electric tools, and
problem.
that's the problem. Yeah, that's the exact problem. All right, I'm gonna go to Harry in the back.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask the board if instead of looking at it as a public safety type of thing, maybe that guardrail could be considered saving and preserving the pond.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's good. Then you can use CPA money.
CPC money?
Of course you can.
Okay.
Preservation of open space.
All right. Well, let's.
But not for public safety purposes.
No, I understand.
Or
I'm with you.
preservation and safety. I mean,
Yeah, that's
the
a
last thing you would
historic
want to have.
So we're gonna talk
for a
about
great
CPC
pond
bonds a little later.
is to have a vehicle go in it and then have gasoline and all kinds of horrible things
All
that
right.
happen.
Okay,
You're
so
preserving
Harry's
the
volunteering
pond.
some money. sounds like to me that.
Once again, I thank you. I couldn't help but think every time I drive down there, is Reagan coming here and saying, Selectmen, tear down that fence.
Yeah.
The same thing many times.
And I'll say, residents, please don't tear down the fence. So we got a little more work to do. Then we can come up with, the design, on our own, and then figure out how much it's gonna cost, and then figure out how we're gonna fund it and when we're gonna do it. I mean, that's at least my opinion. I guess, I won't speak for the board, but I'll speak for myself.
Can I throw something in?
Sure.
Let's say that's the course of action we take. What kind of a timeframe would we look at?
Well, money's involved now, so here's the issue. How do we, say, just pick a number. Say it comes in $35,000. Where do we get the money? That's the issue. So we'd have to figure that one out. It may have to wait for money to be appropriated at the next town meeting, not this one, in a couple of weeks, but the following one. Yeah. So fall.
You're talking about fall?
Yeah. Now, if there's a way we can expend money, through Peter's budget to do it, and then replenish that afterwards, we'd certainly look for a way to do that. At least that's, I'm talking for me. I'm not speaking for the whole board, and they'll chime in, I'm sure, on whether they support me
If
or
we
not.
went through CPC or something, it would be
Yeah, it'd have
next
to be-
spring, so
right,
it
it
would
would
be
have
a
to-
year.
Well, I couldn't, oh yeah, that's right, yeah.
Well, you could also.
We could do free cash if we had to.
You could also take it down, and then when you have the money,
No, I can't, I wouldn't support that. One solution, done, and it's safe, and it's, protecting the pond, protecting residents. I wouldn't wanna, I wanna do it all at once. That would be at least my opinion.
No, I understand that. Did you read the information I put together?
A little bit, yeah, I didn't go crazy, but
Put
yeah.
together quite a pack.
Yeah, it was very good.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks. If you get to the end of it, did you get the part about impalement?
Yes.
That's,
Yes,
that was
all
one
that.
of my personal favorites.
I noticed.
I saw it happen. It was a crash in Bradford. And a pickup truck hit a chain link fence, and it went through like a lance, through the windshield, out the back. It just so happened, it missed the driver. I saw that and I thought, note to self, don't crash into a chain link fence.
Right.
So the existence of the chain link fence, right now, it's a danger. And also in that packet I gave you there, I'll tell you what, people walk, they walk both sides of the street. They walk on the sidewalk side and the other side. And you walk on that side, on that side, which I do. You walk the dog sometimes, and when the cars are coming, usually you walk facing traffic. And people that texting, they're on the phone and stuff. And if they happen to move over to their right, you got nowhere to go. You're done. All you can do is come back and haunt
That happened to us, that happened to us tonight. There was really no place for us to go. So even more support for the guardrail, in that case, to make sure that both walkers and cars are protected on both, for both issues. So, all right, I want to wrap up the discussion. Anybody on the board want to chime in?
Go ahead, Gary.
I'll go with Gary and then we'll
I
move
must
this
have
way.
missed you by about a half an hour, here at 5:30.
I texted you and I called you.
But there was, there's quite a worn path on the opposite side of that chain link fence. So it's obviously not keeping everybody out.
No.
So, I mean, it's a well-worn path that you
It
can
is.
see going right along there, so.
All right, Stephen.
So we have rules on how we can spend money, which is good. I always kind of try to, I won't say bend them, but ask the question, and Janet, don't throw anything at me, but is there a way to get something on this current town meeting? Or is it locked and there is no option to do that? A placeholder, something that, a CPC article that may never come to fruition but will give us an option.
Too late.
aren't posted.
That's
It's
too late.
posted, so that's what I thought.
But
Okay.
there may be a way through Peter's budget to handle that, and we're going to investigate. Let's get the number first. Let's get the design, let's get to what we can agree to, and let's get the number first. I'm going to go through the full board, then I'll entertain a couple more comments, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I mean, the only comment I have is we want to do it. I think that you've heard up the board. I think it's going to come down to one priorities. Yeah, is there risk down there? I think there's risk. Is there risk on other roads in Georgetown that are just as high or higher? Absolutely. I think that we have got to figure out what our priorities are in spending on road infrastructure. We have some big projects coming down the line that are going to spend some significant money. And Elm Street is one of those, and I think that we've got to start to get a sense of what our other costs are going to be over the next little bit here. I like the route of the CPC. I think that is, all things being equal here, if there's a way to convince you guys and then convince the CPC as a board that they're willing to make the investment, let's do it right. And we can lobby the CPC and the board members and then the town to consider that. But that's kind of the preferred route I'd have. It will give us the time to do it right, the time to engineer it, get a bunch of different options, and hopefully we'll be able to look at it that way. Now, granted, if we come up with X amount of dollars in the meantime and we don't have any other priorities for it, be happy to throw it at it. But we just got to get a sense as not just our board, but from the finance committee and other priorities in here. There's a lot of capital improvements in town that have been put on hold, and I need to just weigh those versus, and I think we need to, not just myself, weigh those before we decide that this is at the top of the list, put it that way. So I just want to be clear and open. That's how we've got to look at this.
One thing we have on
Do you have a list of priorities?
We-
What is that list?
We do. Well, we've got the school project is going to be a huge priority for us. That's one, and we're going to be bonding that. So we just got to be careful where else we're spending our money. We've got a lot of other infrastructure projects in town that we have to do. There's a lot of buildings that need a lot of work here. It's a pretty long laundry list. Is it as high a priority? That's not my call, but I think you guys certainly have a warranted priority for us to consider. Absolutely.
And we have the benefit of time. It's not like, we can still work on this and see where we are, in a month, 3 weeks to, 3 or 4 weeks down the road and come up. I'd like to come up with a design of what we're gonna do and price it. So, I mean, if this is again, I'm not just throwing numbers out there, but if it's a $25,000 to $50,000 project, I think it's easier to get that done. If it's a larger number than that, then we should put it in the queue and talk. Again, we're still gonna have to bounce this off finance committee. We're probably gonna have to CIP also, I would say, and then we'll see what avenues we go down. But let's not panic yet. Let's get through the design, figure out what we're gonna do, and let's get a price. We have our support that we're gonna do something. Something has to be done. So.
While we're doing this research and making these plans, is there a possibility of maybe cutting that fence on the bottom 2 feet? Another turtle that same week I sent you that horrible picture was in the middle of the road. So that's 2 turtles in a week, and it's just gonna be like that all summer into the fall and through the spring. Is there any way of giving them a pathway to get from one side to the other so that they're not going back and forth until they finally get crushed? That would be.
What I'd like to do is, I want to meet with my engineer this week and come back to the selectmen next Monday and talk to them what needs to be done out there and have something from the engineering writing. He may say that you can take down the fence and not have to put any guardrail up, but there is sections that will need guardrail, like near the Powells, from the flume to the Powells, will definitely need guardrail. And we may have to add on to the guardrail that's there from Mill Street a little bit. We may not have to put guardrail in that straightaway, but I want to find out from him and find out, so it may not cost a lot of money.
Right.
So, and, taking down the fence, it's, my guys working their regular shift and going out there and hiring a detail cop.
Right.
So, and it shouldn't take more than 2 days to take that fence down.
Right.
So.
Let's get that expert opinion, and then we'll go from there.
Can we, if the,
I have a gentleman that's been patiently waiting in the back. Yes, sir.
What about federal or state grant money or something like that?
That's a good question. Again, I don't know.
No federal money.
There's no federal money. Federal government. Yeah, the problem is time. You're gonna have to wait in line. It's gonna have to be based on its merit. If in any of these types of things. If we want to get this done rather quickly, we're probably on our own. To be honest with you. Sounds like to me. But so we have a plan. Pete's gonna come back to us. That's pretty aggressive next Monday night, and we'll discuss what he's found out from the engineer. We may have great news where it says, hey, you can just do pretty much take the fence down and add a small section of guardrail if it's short. If it's not a lot of money, we may be able to squeeze that out and get that done. All right. So we're on your side. We're definitely not ignoring you, and we're gonna come to a solution.
should we meet again here on Monday then, next Monday?
Yeah, if you want to, sure. There's no.
No. Town meeting.
Oh, that's town meeting. our next meeting, not next Monday, the following, the meeting after, right?
We have a
12.
meeting on the
It's 3 weeks after.
Can I have
13th,
your
is it?
You know what the
Or the
engineer
12th?
said. So I have your-
13th,
Okay, sure.
May 13th.
Well, we do meet next Monday, but
Yeah, but not in the
We're not-
forum, we're gonna be at town hall in the lunchroom, so, I mean, at the.
school.
School in the lunchroom, so that's not
I
gonna work.
just say Peter's got something.
Yeah, if Pete's got something you wanna bring it to us that night, and then we can look at it, and then we'll put it on the agenda for the following board, selectmen meeting, how's that? All right? George?
Yeah, is there any reason to keep the gate locked on the downstream side that goes out on the conservation lane?
I have no clue. I'm being honest with you. I don't know.
It's just been locked since I've been there, so I have, we can take the gate right off, because there's guardrail right there, so.
I know there's always been locked there. I know Marine Fisheries is working bringing alewife back to the pond. I'm not sure where they're dumping it out.
Again, I can't answer the question. I don't know. I mean, sometimes we just say that's the way it is and that's the way it's been, but nobody really explained why. Again, ask the engineer that question and see what he has to say. And we'll get back together next Monday, and then the following Monday, we'll put it on the agenda for all the residents to come. You can certainly attend our meeting in the cafeteria, the lunchroom.
in the
The home ec room?
Yeah.
Home ec room at the
Meeting
high
room.
school.
But that's a short meeting.
Yeah, it's a quick meeting for us. We really,
Yeah, there's not a lot of time.
So maybe Peter can just kind of hand out, give us some
I
information.
can let Mike know.
Yeah.
Peter, is the Chapter 90 money available?
There is money, there is gonna be a lot allocated for the culvert on, the two culverts on Central Street and the culvert on Thurlow Street. I was gonna bring you that paperwork to sign. We did get more money this year in Chapter 90. The pavement maintenance program is done, is installed on the computer, and we're gonna start aggressively going after some roadways that need, desperate work, so.
Right, but we got about 100,000 more than in the past.
150,000
Yeah.
more.
So hypothetically, not holding you to it, if this project came in with your guys and some guardrail at 15, 20,000, could we
Yes.
squeeze that out?
Yep.
Okay.
What's your priorities in terms of road maintenance this year and expenditure?
We have a 5-year plan now, and I want to present it to the selectmen, but I was gonna wait until after town
Oh.
meeting, and so.
You just
It's
teased
a
us.
little
Beautiful.
PowerPoint, and I showed it to the FinCom, and they loved it, they couldn't believe it, and I probably could have, gotten a whole fleet of vehicles that night, because they were so happy.
You left without asking. I'm surprised.
Didn't close the deal? What's going on?
All right, so we have a process. We're gonna follow that process. Peter's gonna get together with us is it next week? Yeah, next week, all right, trying to get the dates right. I can't believe it's May already. And then the following week, it'll be on the agenda, and we'll have everybody back. And you're certainly welcome to come and hear what Pete has to say if there's anything on Monday night.
I can send him an email, I have his email address, and
Yeah.
what
Then
I
you can
find out from the
distribute to the
engineer.
group.
And I'll give what I find out from the engineer to Mike to.
Yeah, all right.
That'd be great if we could do a stopgap instead of having to replace the whole thing.
Yeah, if we can do it, well, let's get it done.
Yep.
All right, good.
Sounds good.
All right, thanks, everybody.
All right, good night. Thanks for
Hi,
coming.
guys.
Okay, getting back to our normal course of business here. Minutes of April 22nd. Everybody take a look at those? So I would entertain a motion to accept the minutes of April 22nd, 2013.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I abstain. I was absent.
And one
Rather
abstention.
lengthy.
Yeah.
Very detailed.
Yep. Okay, we have the warrant to be signed. Obviously, if you haven't signed that, there's also the agreement for the electrical, for the power lines, for the rail trail. So take a look at that, make sure that you get to sign that. We do have some correspondence. We had a notice of resignation of Deb Rogers from the Personnel Board. I'd like to personally thank Deb for all of her hard work and dedication to that committee. She will be missed on that particular committee. Thanks again, Deb, for all of your service. Old business. Again, I'm holding off on one of the new business items till the end. CPC discussion on bonding of the CPC articles. So, CPC committee, if you're here, come on up. You just waiting for us to sign that?
Yeah, just waiting for
Oh,
Hi, Mr. Chairman.
Can I put you on hold for 1 second, Harry? Because
By all
Jeff's
means.
just sitting here waiting for a signed
Give me a
document.
chance to do something here. I'll hand out a pamphlet.
Got 4 to sign.
One's your copy,
Okay.
just for now, and I'll give you.
Finally, huh, Jeff? Finally getting those done, so that's great.
license?
Yes.
Yes.
The license.
yes,
The
yes.
long-awaited license.
Yes. Wow.
Can you believe it? Did you bring the champagne?
No. You
No?
can't do that in a public area.
Oh, well, you know, we'll go down,
Oh, without a permit.
we'll go down the other place. But good job on the rail committee getting that done. You know, I know that was a ton of work and
It's long coming, but it's
a lot of work.
I just want to see you out there this weekend clearing.
Peter just left. We
Well, I know, I
got
should've-
Peter off the hook.
Run the tractor right down the
We
middle.
got a few on there to go through still.
It's a bush hog.
Did everybody sign this?
Did you sign
Everybody
the,
that signs it, want to sign it, that signed it? Okay, good. We're good. All right. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks a lot.
Should we tell people from town what that's all about? Because they're
Well, we did that we did do a meeting, a whole full meeting on it, so, but,
thumbnail sketch?
yeah.
it is a big milestone, which is good.
All right, so,
Congratulations.
CPC is here to talk about bonds, which is one of my favorite subjects.
Apropos for tonight, huh?
All right, so shoot.
So you know, we have a meeting. I'm hereby opening the meeting of the CPC meeting. I posted it as a meeting just in case there were 4 of us, and there are. This actually constitutes a quorum for the CPC, so we had to do that. I don't know if everybody got a copy or not. Did everybody get a copy of what I handed out? Fantastic. Just like you to take a look at. We had the CPA public informational hearing. I think it was April 2nd or something like that.
I know, things still.
That was the night we presented all the projects, we did the PowerPoint, that whole thing. One of the folks in the audience, a lovely lady named Laura, asked a very pointed question, a very simple question. If we do this bonding, which CPA has never done bonding before in Georgetown, if we do this bonding, what's going to happen to the fund? And none of us honestly could answer that question. We kind of had a feeling, but we had no way to quantify it. Now, thanks to James Davenport, at our last meeting, what we did was, prior to our last meeting, James is a professional financial analyst, and what we did is we put together, pardon me? So-called professional. Well, you do it for a living, I mean, you make money doing it.
Someone's paying them.
Yeah, well, we're not paying him. He's a volunteer. What we did was, and you're looking at the end result of it, I had asked Mike. Mike was kind enough to send all of the contact the town treasurer, find out the debt schedules for the 5-year, 10-year, and 15-year bonds. And we looked at a very, very similar spreadsheet to the one you're seeing at our last CPC meeting. Once we looked at it, the question arose, what would a 7-year bond note look like, and what would be the effect on the fund? Mike was kind enough to ask Jackie for that. She sent it in due course, and James was kind enough to plug that into this. Just to go over it very, very, very quickly. You'll see at the very top, of course I don't have my glasses with me, right? Thank you, Jim. At the very top, my God, those are filthy. Jeez. At the very top, you're gonna look at the actual 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012 total gross receipts. It's better without them, I can't even see, they're too dirty. At 2013, we go into what are referred to as projections. These are naturally, I hate projections. I can't stand projections because they're guesses. So the best way that James and I came up with to figure out the numbers for projections is we took no more than we have ever received, ever. So these are what you would call the most conservative projections that you could possibly have, and we've gone out 5-6 years here.
Question. So, these projections include some type of match from the state?
Yes, 47%.
47%.
40%.
Okay, I think you need to also take a look at what if, and it's just a what if, what's the scenario if the state doesn't match any of the fund? Can the fund sustain the debt service?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact,
But it
we are
does
not
put it-
allowed to use anything other than the local receipts to service the debt with a CPA bond.
So,
You
so
just
that
can't
being
do it.
said, if the state's match went away,
If it went to zero,
went to zero,
Mhm.
and we took one of these more aggressive stances and said we want to do a 5-year bond,
Mhm.
we may be handcuffing ourselves for the future to do future projects. And I think that's what the lady might have been asking you was, you know, if hypothetically, if we only collected the 3% that we get from our own residents, how would that affect our fund? So 479 does include some match for the state. Can we back that out? What's our end that we collect from the residents versus versus money that's matched?
334?
Is it, I mean, is it on here?
James, you're going to have to back those numbers out for,
Sure.
and you can do it with this sheet.
Yeah, sure.
It's-
So
yeah.
the available receipts for the bond debt service is your second line that you're looking at. So for 2013, it drops to 334,000.
And that's just local receipts.
That's local receipts and interest.
I got it. Okay.
So in order to give you a presentation on one page, we actually, the CPC, we have a master sheet. I took a few things out. So the gross receipts includes local receipts, matching funds, interest, and for the rare occasion, grants.
Okay.
I took those out, so you just have the total gross receipts. And then the second line that you see is the receipts for debt service. Your earlier question is, what happens at the most conservative level? How much do we have available for the bond? So there's a debt service ratio for available receipts for the bond, 5-year being 1.32 times. That basically means that the receipts available for the 5-year bond, which is the most aggressive amortized bond, is 1.32 times. $253,000, you'll notice,
You do
for the
commercial
first
lending?
year.
You work in commercial lending? Sounds like it.
Hey, I have
We use
just a
debt service a
question.
lot.
On that 334, is that all of the entire receipts that the town collects for CPA, or is that just the available for this particular type of project?
Local receipts
gross.
plus
That's all of it.
interest.
That's all
But
the money.
that's every projected nickel of.
Not with the match. The
Right.
match is the number above it.
Yeah, but-
added to it.
What about the 10%?
What 10%?
10% for the three. Have to put in each category.
Drop down now. Drop
That's the
down to
bottom.
reserves. The second dark line is called reserves here. When you drop down to year one, you'll notice that 10% would be put in for community housing, year one. We're saying year one because that's a big question. We don't know when you guys are pulling the trigger on this. So we're calling it year one. We're not putting a year per se
Okay.
on it,
Yep.
okay?
Yep.
You'll see that what we've done is we've taken 10% for community housing. If you notice, our projections are exactly the same for each year. If you notice up at the top, the projections,
Right.
they flat line. We're not assuming growth at all. We're not assuming any of that.
Right.
When I say that it's conservative, this is as dead conservative as you can possibly be and be anywhere near realistic.
So you know
10%
about,
for community housing is
Right.
taken, 48K. 10% for historic, 5% for administrative, less than 5% for administrative. And as far as the open space is concerned, we do not have to reserve open space anymore at 10%. We have a debt service that more than covers it.
so what, you need to add one more line though.
What's that?
See that total receipts after reserves, that's 479 less 120, is that right? You should take the 120
358.
less the 334, because that would be the true number around what's that, 334 minus 120 is about 210? Is that-
I'm sorry?
Yeah, so follow me, see the total reserves at 120, right?
Mm-hmm.
Year one, 120,660. Right underneath it, you have 358,340. You're subtracting that 120 from the 479, right?
Mm-hmm.
You should really be subtracting that 120 from the 334, and that's what your true debt service really is. Because if you take 334, right? Follow me with this.
Yeah.
You reserve,
Yep.
you gotta take 75% of 334, which is about 210. You gotta take the most aggressive, you really have about.
75%. I lost you, I'm sorry.
Because 10%, and 5, I'm going the other way. 10%, you have to reserve, basically, you have to reserve 25% of the
35.
CPC
I get you,
money.
35,
Is it
right.
30? No, it's 10, 10, and 5, that's
Well,
25.
25 plus we have to also service the debt.
Well, I understand, but before we get there, I'm pre-servicing the debt, so.
And
Yep.
that's what that,
Right, so you really should have taken, add one more line and take the 120 off the 334, because that's the base, that would be the lowest possible amount of money that we would have to service whatever option we take, which is about $210,000.
well, 358 is the number after we take our reserves.
But you got
and after
matching
we
money in
service
there.
our debt.
Yeah, but you got matching money in there. You're taking it off the
Are you
479.
taking it off the 479?
Right? Are you taking it off the 479?
Match is,
Right.
It shouldn't be. You need to take it off. Here's what I'm looking at. Our worst case scenario is the state goes to 0, right? Follow my thought process.
Go ahead.
We take in 334,000, right?
Right.
Of that, 25% gets reserved for housing, historic, and admin. So now you're down to 75% of 334,000 is about $210,000. Follow me?
I think I understand what you're saying, but
And
it's,
that's your base. That's your raw, lowest, most conservative number for debt service.
the likelihood
on
of
local
getting a
receipts.
zero
Yeah,
state
but Harry, I
match
want to follow
is the
this.
same as having an underride
Understand?
locally. So, I
Understand,
mean,
but what if the state says, you know what, we're not going to do it anymore?
the
Again,
state's
highly
putting
unlikely.
25 million into the trust fund this year.
Again, it's a projection. And projections, you want to look at bottom line,
worst
bottom
case.
line. Again, I'm just for my you know me,
Absolutely.
I'm not a numbers guy.
Absolutely.
So if you're going with that, so I'm at $210,000 is what your raw lowest amount that you would be able to, highest amount you would use in the worst case scenario would be $210,000 to fund these bonds. That's where I'm at.
So it basically take your 5-year out of the equation.
Yes.
Would it be a little higher than that? Because the 10% and 5% are based on the 479. So,
Absolutely.
So you're actually at 75% of 334, so it's a little higher than that, I believe.
Well, it's 210, right? 334 minus 120 is what? Let's go. 314.
213.
213.
340.
Right. So we got $213,000 on a worst case. State says zero match, no
So
growth in
five's right
town,
out.
3%.
Five's right out. We can't handle it.
Can't
Right.
handle it.
But
Exactly.
Can't do it at all.
Mr. Chair, just to correct though, so but the 120 is based on 25% of the 480.
Okay,
which
so
you
you're
can
right.
see.
All right, so there is a little more money
What
there.
I'm saying is it's really
Maybe it's
75%
250.
of the 334.
right.
Yep. Okay.
Remember, you,
So maybe-
you have to match that 10%
Right.
figure
Good
to
catch,
reach
Steve.
whatever your total revs are.
Yep.
Your
So
total
that's
rev has to
34.
take into account
So it's another
I'm a sales guy on that kind of
34, 40,
Yeah, but you're looking
14,
at
30.
discounts, buddy.
30. So you're okay. I'll give you another 40,000. So you're at 255. You can maybe swing the
75
5 year.
and
The 5 years
334.
too aggressive, if you ask me.
Yeah, there might be emergencies to come up in the next
Right.
5 years that we
What
might
was
want
you and I?
to drop.
Give you
The
250.
334.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a little
At
too aggressive.
75%.
Okay.
The thing that I think most of the CPA members wanted to look at was the number of what the undesignated would look like afterwards in year 1, year 2, year 3.
Right.
With each of the 4 bond scenarios. And essentially, what they wanted to look at is, we have good confidence we can make that 10% reserve, easily make the 10% reserve. The question is, after we make that almost $50,000 reserve for each one of the categories, what do we have left to work with?
Yeah.
I mean, we definitely make that 10%. We have to. We have no choice. That's the law. But what would we be able to fund afterward? And when the CPC met at the last meeting, there was no preference given. Essentially, what they asked for was this, to sit with you folks. Because at this point in time, the way it is that the warrant article came through just saying bonding. Our recommended motion for the project was to fund a certain amount of money, 250, and do the bond, and give the discretion of the bonding to the board, to your board. At this point, I'd like to know, and I think the board wants to know, where that decision will be made. Will you folks be making that decision? Will we be making it? Will we be making it as a group effort? The level of comfort that some CPA members have is to go with 15 years. Others, like the 5 or the 7. It's a very, very difficult decision to make because it leaves us with either 166,000 in undesignated or 240.
Okay, so here's the statute question. By statute, who makes the decision?
The treasurer.
Okay. And we have to sign off on all borrowings, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, looking at that, I think it lies in the hands of the town side rather than the CPA.
Okay.
Now,
then we
next
can put this
question
away.
is, it's
It's not our decision anymore.
No,
And
I
that's
think
what we
it's,
needed
no,
to
this is a
decide.
joint decision with
We
joint
wanted to know
discussion.
if we needed to focus on this anymore or not.
We won't make a decision without your input.
Yeah, we need your input. Now, my question is, here's what you always want to ask is, what's the useful life of what we're using the money for?
State says 15 years.
Okay. So, for bond counsel would never let us exceed useful life anyway, right?
Right.
Obviously.
It's recreational. You're limited to 15.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So, just looking at it, and this is, again, one person talking, I think you're in the 10 to 15. I think 5 and 7 puts too much pressure and strain on your fund. I know you want to get it paid off quickly. I know some people may want to do that, but there may be other projects that come up that you may want to, that you're gonna strap yourself going forward. Well, the next question is, what do you have in available funds that you haven't spent?
Not much now.
It's gone.
It's all gone.
Oh, yeah.
So,
It's all-
you're
it's
going
all
into
gone.
this, yeah, so.
Broke.
If everything passes at CPC at town
Yeah,
meeting,
we're at
that's
zero.
all.
We started zero.
So my next question is, are you bonding enough? Maybe you should be bonding a little bit more. Did you kick in cash on this deal, almost like a down payment? How much, 250?
50. 250 is the proposal.
My thought is, are you strapping yourselves too much going forward? I think 5 and 7 are out of the question.
Well,
unless-
one of the
Unless you kept
concerns-
some of that 250 and bonded more.
One of the concerns is the difference in interest. As you go from a 5-year bond, you're paying 2% interest. If you go to a 15-year bond, you're going 3% interest.
Yeah.
And the difference between a 7-year bond and a 15-year bond at total interest is well over
But you
160,000.
may like what's gonna happen in the future, because rates can only go one spot from here. You're better off to look in that 10 to 15 area, because the yield on the money that you're using may flip-flop, you may invert the other way. Meaning, the money that you earn in 15, 16, 17, 18 may yield more than 3%.
No,
Which will-
it won't.
Why?
Because
You know where rates
we
are
went
going?
from $20,000 in interest last year, and all the other years before it, to the fund dropping to 9,000 this year.
Right. Two things, rate and you spent the money.
Rate's probably not gonna go down.
Tank.
The interest rate's probably not gonna go down from
Right.
here.
Oh,
Rates are
no,
gonna-
it can't go
So-
below, what is
so
it, 3?
when you're borrowing-
3% or something now?
Again.
We're getting 0.3.
5 years, the 5 years, way too much.
Right.
Way too much of a strain. I think 7 really puts a lot of strain on you, just looking at the numbers. I think you're in the, I think the logical solution is the 10-year. You're only up another 1/4% from the 7.
Yeah.
It's a 1/2 point from the 5. And right, 2.5%, borrowing money at 2.5%.
It's another
Like I
$50,000 in
said,
interest.
as you get into years 4 through 10, the money that you're depositing and holding at 334 may be yielding more than 2.5%. That's what I was trying to say to you.
Oh, I understand that.
So you're
It
gonna go
doesn't
the
sound
other
like
way.
it's going to be.
It may also satisfy.
Well, it will be. I'm telling you, the
guarantee
rates
it
are
will be.
definitely going
It's
to go
not
up,
gonna-
Harry. They're not going
If it's
down.
not,
from here.
then we've got
I'm talking
bigger
about the
issues.
money, the rates that you're going to earn on your balance of your fund, and after within this 10 years, it's going to go up. What are you earning on your money right now? 15, 20 basis points?
0.33
30
is what the
basis
town's
points,
getting?
right.
0.3?
0.3.
0.3.
That's today.
That's a money market account.
Right.
Last year, they were at 0.7.
Right.
It's
So
more-
rates
less
could
than
go
half.
up, and they probably will. Again, who am I? But in years 4 through 10, you may be seeing that money that you're putting in on deposit could be higher than 2.5%. Money market funds 5 years ago were 4 or 5%.
Yeah.
So that could come back. Those days.
This is
could
going to
come
be
back.
gone in 2 years.
Oh,
The
you're gonna
money
be-
that we're going to get in will be gone in 2 years. You'll be paying it to the contractor.
No, but
No, not the money-
2.9
no.
million you have in your reserve account right
Right.
now.
Right.
That's what you're going to be making the money on.
Right.
Right, but
You can't make any arbitrage on this.
Right. You're
Right,
not making
I know,
money-
it's
No,
a
I
shame,
wasn't
it
talking
really
about
is.
the proceeds. The assumption
I
is.
was kinda hoping for that.
No, no, you're not gonna be able to do that.
Nice try.
Not gonna happen.
Part of this financial arrangement is.
That's why I was asking about
The big assumption on this
That's why I had
is,
Jackie do the
big assumption
projection.
on this is that money's gonna be spent.
Maybe you should
I'm
get
not
into
talking
this.
about the proceeds from this.
Okay.
I'm not talking about hedging. I'm talking
No,
about your normal receipts
Right.
on an annual basis in years probably
What you're floating on your
3
res-
through
on your-
7
About
Yeah.
20K.
will increase.
20K, yeah.
So, to me, again, I wouldn't wanna see you strap your fund. I think you're in the 10-year area, but Gary had a question.
Is it, the reason you have that much money, is it because things that are, some are that far behind in getting the projects done? Or is that very typically, since we've started CPA, you've typically end up holding that amount because?
That license that you folks just signed off on,
Yeah.
to get the grant of 718,000 that those folks got to do the section between, what is it, Salisbury and Topsfield and down to Boxford, they needed,
Full funding or approval on it, right?
pretty much full funding to show the state that they were serious. And,
So it's just been held up. I mean,
think
it's been
like,
sitting there, you haven't spent.
that's like 600,000, I believe.
Well, what I'm
It's just sitting
saying
there
is,
right now.
in your plan in the future, do you continually see having that much money in the bank, or do you see that getting lower?
Oh, no,
as
that's
projects get
gonna
done?
be spent. I mean, it's already appropriated, it's all just waiting for people to pull the plug. Waiting on permits,
So
waiting
you
on
feel that
licenses, waiting
it's
on
very typical that
implementation.
you'll typically have
Yeah.
$2 to $3 million hanging around.
No,
Okay.
no, much the opposite. You'll probably see.
300,000, 400, whatever random.
So that
number.
interest
You'll see,
won't be
yeah,
there.
you'll see blips.
But don't forget, it'll be replenished by local receipts for the local year. So, to say, you probably have
blip up
about,
and blip down.
you probably have about $1 million.
Carry.
Yeah.
The 10-year is good too, because a lot of people who say, okay, if
Knock on wood.
the state doesn't contribute anything, maybe we should pull out of CPC. Well, this will float our obligation for 10 years, not 15. So if the state did pull out and gave us no money back, then why are we doing it, right?
Right. Well, we still have projects we're paying for that we borrowed on.
Well, no, whatever we float 10 years, so we'd be obligated to have the CPC fund active for 10 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Unless you put a call provision in the bond,
Right.
which is.
Would we be able to do that? Because we would definitely like to be able to do that. I mean,
Well, that's gonna cost you.
I know you're thinking zero match and all that.
Right.
I look at 2018. I look at it and I say, these are very, very conservative numbers. The match is gonna go up. Our growth rate goes up. Once our levy rises, CPA rises, everything goes up. We most likely are gonna have a lot more money available than, for that 7-year bond, 166,000 and undesignated. I would say we're gonna have more than that because the match is gonna.
This is the minimal risk, is what you're saying. Right.
This is how we're viewing minimal risk.
Yeah.
And
We're taking a
Dave,
little more
what-
conservative
Right,
approach.
yeah, you're taking even more.
So if you
yeah.
add an embedded option,
But we want
generally,
to see worst case.
if you add an embedded option, your rate's gonna go up. I think if you add a call provision, you're not gonna get a 2.5% bond.
What would the number be?
I can't say, because if you add, because don't forget, if you put it, say you said this was a 10-year bond with a 5-year call protection. So it's not callable until, when we
5
take the
years
bond?
out.
It is what, 13? It's not callable
Year
until
6.
18.
Year
Right.
6.
So if that's the case, investors are gonna want and look at that money as if it's a 5-year investment.
Right.
So 5-year rates, right? You're gonna have
Pay
to
a
probably
premium on it.
Yeah, you're gonna probably have to entice them a little bit more to take it, right? Than locking in for 10. I don't know. I mean, we'd have to go to bond council and ask that question. If we add an embedded option, then how much additional, if it goes the other way, then maybe we can offer it a little lower on the street.
Well,
I don't know.
Jackie and I talked to financial advisor today, and they have not seen a callable bond that's less than 10 years.
Okay, well, there's the answer. So I think if you were going with a 15, you could do a 10-year with a 10,
Do a
non-call for 10 years, and after that becomes continuous, so you could do a quarterly call, you could do a monthly continuous, quarterly.
15 to 10.
Right, right.
Yeah, the only worry I have is that although the manufacturer said the useful life is 15 years, I worry that we're really not, what really gets useful life anymore?
Right. So I think, again, this is personal opinion, me talking, I think you're at the 10-year rate.
Yeah.
I think pretty much, just because you want to have that cushion, just in case. I know it may be overly cautious, but you know what, that'll give us room to do other things.
I asked a question on that though, but this pays for the setup and all the preparation. It doesn't actually pay for the actual material, right?
No, the GAA's paying for the actual material, which is a $500,000 donation now, and they're $500,000, well, a replacement donation in 15 years.
So the warranty's a little different twist in terms of relevancy, because you're not actually paying for that equipment. That has to be accrued and taken care of in a whole different way. The site work and everything that's being done actually has a much longer lifespan than that. So we shouldn't mix apples and oranges. We're not paying for a 15-year life.
The stands will get a longer
thing.
life.
You're paying for the more
The
permanent
irrigation
stuff. Now,
system.
not that I'm stretching it, but I'm just saying, and that has to have a whole different accrual system that
Yeah,
we
that's
talked
an
about with the GAA
interesting
to
point.
replenish in 15 years.
Yeah, but Steve, one thing to consider is if this thing only lasted for 10 years, we would be then paying an additional money to have new construction and maintenance done there, which would be while we're paying for the old stuff at the same time.
Right.
So that's, I get what you're saying.
I guess the question, would we though, or would that be part of the GAA replacement? Again, it's not that relevant, but I'm just saying it's a little.
They are paying for the replacement and the disposal, and they're looking at the town to actually do the service portion.
I would, if I were in one of your seats, what I would be looking for is very, very soon getting an agreement, long before I pull the trigger on this. I would have a lockdown agreement with GAA.
Oh, we
Set
won't sign anything,
everybody's-
believe me.
Everybody has to know
Side issue
where
on that
everybody else is.
Jim, you're on the, this is being driven mostly by the turf.
Right.
They're not signing any contracts until no contracts are being signed for any work until it comes to the Board of Selectmen, am I right?
Correct.
Okay. We want to make that perfectly clear, that everything comes to us for discussion and approval. And GAA really shouldn't be going ahead and entering into their own contracts
No.
with the,
If I may, the GAA has nothing to do with this, and I have
Making
not
a
yet
donation.
seen.
They're just making the
Well, that's
donation.
the
I
point.
haven't seen the warrant article
Right.
itself.
Just want to make sure they're
but
not
It's the
contracting.
stack committee that was created so that the stack can receive the funding for this, the cash. That is your mechanism. In the same exact way that the recreational path committee is the recipient of the CPA money, okay? That's that town, you guys appointed it. That's why.
I think 7 to 10 is reasonable, because I think one of the other things people, when they vote, and of course we have to get their vote, there's a lot of other work to be done in town. They don't want to have a 15-year bond. They want to say, okay, this is going to be done, and then we're going to move to the top field, we're going to move to, what other things are on our plate. You're telling them to hold up funding for 15 years, I think it has them worried, that's a long time.
Because I think if so I'm looking at this, and so we did worst case, which means basically 5 years. If we did a 5-year bond, you're out of business, because your receipts, with a 0% match, your receipts, once you take your reserves, basically equal your debt payment.
Hardly.
worst case scenario. Yeah.
Historical will get 50,000 a year if they had a project. There'd be other, there'd be other small projects, 10, 15, but there would be no major projects.
That's what I mean. So you'd be squeezed. There'd be-
The most likely scenario is a 5-year bond. We'd have about a $50,000.
That's just.
And I gotta tell
And
you,
$104,000 as discretionary on.
Right. So I'm just saying though, so we went through worst case, 5-year bond. There is, if everything went wrong, you can still make payments, but the spirit of the CPC gets compromised a little bit in terms of what you're trying to accomplish. I can understand the mentality of the 10-year, getting it, off the books sooner, So it does seem to me the 7-year worst case still gives you cushion. It gives you slightly better rate. Again, it's worst case. So, I mean, I'm just putting my 2 cents in there in terms of.
I lean towards the 7 myself.
My only thing is, as a banker, their interest is so low, it doesn't matter if it's
Take the money.
2 or 3.
Right.
We all had mortgages.
Another quarter, take the 10 and be
Right.
safe.
We all had mortgages at
Seriously.
9% for a while, right?
The other 1/4%, take the 10. We're gonna pay the same administrative fees and everything up front, right, Mike? All those processing fees. Take the 10
And give yourself some breathing
and
room.
give yourself some breathing room. Don't strap yourself on this.
I mean,
10, there's nothing, there's no disgrace or any I don't know how to say, not disgrace, but there's no bad way of financing this at 10, I don't know how to say it, but.
And if a lot of good projects don't come out, the possibility, if we ran into having 300,000 extra in a year, could we prepay at the end? No.
No,
Okay.
no. But you can hold it in reserve.
Right.
So that if you had a
Float it.
bad year, you could still have.
Work on other
Right.
projects.
Yeah, just
Right.
float
So we
it.
want to see you get strapped. All right, so when do we have to make a
You can
final?
put a new fence up at Pond on
Yeah,
the
all right, let Mike has a.
I had a
Mike's
question,
bringing
and-
us back to.
And Mike might
Yeah,
be
well,
answering my
it was
question.
something that Harry just said, and it kind of got brushed over, but as far as Harry said, it's his understanding that the stack committee was going to be the distributor
Appropriation.
of the funds.
Right.
That's the first I've heard of that.
Okay.
I don't think the board has decided that.
What's the stack committee?
The advisory committee.
Oh,
for
the
the
turf,
advisory
the
committee.
turf, oh, that's the
Yeah,
acronym.
that's a question for the selectmen is, and I agree, that the definition has to be, once you get the money, is it gonna be a school committee project, or is it gonna be a stack
Well,
committee?
that,
Well, the
that's,
bond
that's
council
what
has
I.
answered that question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did we address
It-
That's been addressed by bond council.
It's a school committee project.
Oh, this is a school committee project?
Yes, they have control, the
okay.
entity
This
that
is
has
news to us.
control of the project, meaning control of the thing that's.
They have
being-
control of the field.
Fields, this is a school committee issue.
Oh, okay. Then you don't
Very
need the staff
controllable.
committee anymore. Okay.
No, then we're
No.
done. Get out of here.
No, we-
No, I mean,
No, I don't think the stack committee is done yet. We want to come back and then we'll have a joint meeting with school committee and lay it all out. But we would, again, we had charged the committee with go find the solution and come back to us with that solution. And, are we there yet? Do we have a written agreement in place with GAA? No, right?
right.
So,
So
Mr.
if
Chair,
I understand, then the only thing that we as a board have got to be, take accountability and ownership is the bond itself.
Yes.
Once it gets bonded and approved and bonded and signed, it goes to the school committee, and they're responsible for managing the project and
school-
dispersing the contracts.
School committee is the agent to expend.
Yes.
okay.
Less work for us, less for us.
All right, so this was just a discussion. There's no votes to be taken or anything. But, I mean, again,
Just wanted a sense of the board.
yeah,
Oh, thank you for that. I mean, that was very helpful.
Thank you.
Well, let me
Now
get a
that-
full
now that-
sense from everybody on what option you think, what recommendation or just, non-binding recommendation would be the 10-year? Am I hearing that from everybody?
I mean, 7 to 10, I mean,
I don't have a clue until this goes through our treasurer, and goes to the bonding companies,
Then
and we
we'll
figure out
Sure.
what the actual pro forma looks like, and then we
Yes.
can make an intelligent.
no, but on this
decision.
workup,
But,
No,
you
but
know,
just based
but
on
this
this
helps you
discussion.
get a sense of cash flow for the next few years in terms of where we're thinking. So,
So I would say what I'm thinking is not pushing the envelope with 5 if it straps us in worst case, not dragging this out to 15.
Well, either way, yeah.
And I think the 7, honestly, I am not qualified to decide whether 7 or 10 is better, given the small change in interest rate and the small relative time scheme. So getting a financial recommendation from an expert, I'd be good with that, I think. But that's what I would say,
Yeah.
what I'm feeling.
Right. And no embedded option with a call provision, I think.
Plus, you got a bond, you got a 007, that would always kind of.
that's like you.
All right, so are we
But you
are
can
we
miss a
good?
10, that's good.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Is there any legal requirement that that we need to set up in order to put reserves aside? Or does the CPC manage our additional funds that we want to set aside each year if that was an option if we had additional funds
To make the call?
to make the call?
You can set, I talked to legal counsel about that today, and you can do whatever you
Okay.
want to do as
All right.
far as building up reserves to pay for the, actually, I talked to the auditor, not legal counsel.
Okay.
She-
I mean, if you-
She said you guys are free to put your money where you need to.
Put it in
You
a
want to.
special bond reserve account.
Or trial
so to speak.
balance, just internal
Well,
trial
just-
balance, or?
Yeah, yeah.
That kind of defeats the purpose unless you had a call feature, in all honesty.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, you have to have
Yeah,
the call
that's-
feature, yeah, that presumes a
And I
call
wouldn't
feature.
abandon the 15-year bond with the 10-year, with the call feature after 10 years. Because then that gives you a little more flexibility. You just don't know,
We'll have options.
That's what I mean.
It's a lot of interest.
Right.
That's a lot of interest.
Yeah, but you can go to 10 and pay it off as if it was 10. And you may actually save a little bit of money on the interest rate, now that I think about it.
Right.
Because you would only may have to pay a 10-year rate. Well, the 10-year rate, you may get it at 2.5 and do a step-up callable Okay, now it's getting really deep, but you could do a step-up callable, talk to bond counsel about that. The first 10 years is guaranteed at 2.5. If you don't call it, it steps to 3% for the next 5. If you call it, that's when you could set up the reserve, and that's where the reserve would be useful.
Okay.
So you could do two embedded options.
Oh, we could pay it off in 7 years.
Right. No, you can't. You won't be
You
able
got
to.
a hard number.
If we had a 7-year bond, we
If
could.
you had a 7-year bond.
Right.
Right, for a straight 7. All right, so there's your options, guys. Bond accounting 101.
There you
Good
go.
job.
Thank you.
Very good job.
Yeah, thanks for that.
All right.
One quick thing.
Yes,
Why
Mr. Fowler.
can't they just loan themselves the money? They got all the money in the bank.
Yeah, no, it's all reserved.
I gotta be used.
Well, look at the accountant's report.
Is it encumbered or
it's
reserved, or I guess
designated,
both, or one and the
Borrowing
same?
money and we got it all sitting in the bank.
Designated for
Right.
assignment.
Can I bring up something that is but isn't
Yeah, I realize
CPC
that.
related?
Okay, we've got still a lot of deliberation to do, but
Okay.
it's gonna take 5
And I have to
minutes.
get home myself.
Takes
But
5 minutes.
this is a 5-minute job, and it's something that looks like this.
On the back of this?
It's the back, and there is a warrant article on that I saw in the draft of the warrants.
Say that again, Harry.
There's a
I'm sorry.
warrant article, I believe it's, what number is it?
What number is that?
28? 28? Yeah, 28. That is not a CPC recommended article, although it does follow right after all the CPA articles, recommended articles. And essentially what it's on the back page of the sheets. The handout.
28, what's the issue?
28.
Changing the members on the board?
It changes it's proposed to change the
It's
members
not
of
under
the
the
board.
CPC agenda, it has its own separate.
No, it's right immediately after, that was so you could find it.
Yeah.
I just want to make it clear that it would have been nice if we had been consulted about this,
Okay, I want to stop you right there, Harry. I think I would bring
because
that
there's a problem.
Okay, well, I mean, I would bring this up at town meeting. This is
Okay.
not-
Okay,
as
well,
long as
I
closed,
can.
Bring it up at town meeting, seriously.
Okay,
All right?
but
All right,
2015, you have a problem.
okay, well, just
Okay.
bring that up at town meeting. I think that's the time. It's
Okay. I just wanted to let you guys know that I wanted to know how you would best want to resolve the problem. But,
I mean, just, I'm not going to reopen the warrant for discussion.
oh, no, it would have to be done from the floor.
Right.
It would
let's
have
do
to be
then.
done from the
That's
floor.
the parliamentary procedure at this point. All right.
Absolutely.
Thanks, everybody. Again, great job.
Yeah,
I
thank
love
you.
numbers, you know that.
Let's go back to the turtles.
You made this night interesting.
All right.
Or kept them engaged, I don't know, what do you want to know?
Let's see. So,
Thanks, guys.
before we.
Thank you.
Thanks, Harry.
Thanks, guys.
Before we have discussion on the new business item of the police chief, town administrators report, anything to report, Mike?
We're ready for town meeting. We'll have the motions back from legal counsel. Well, we'll be ready tomorrow, actually.
Okay.
We'll have the motions back from town council and, Finance Committee
comment.
book is out and
Yep, sorry.
being distributed throughout the town at local, at all the town offices and the library.
It's on the website, right?
It's on the website,
Under the news section?
so
And on the FinCom page.
Okay.
we're ready for town meeting.
Great. Okay. All right, so last thing on our agenda for the evening is the deliberation on, and discussion around the police chief interviews from last week. Just as a general comment, I thought that, both applicants did a great job. We certainly respect all of their time and commitment to, the years of service that both candidates have given us. Over the years, they've done a fine job and have been fine representatives of the town of Georgetown. With that being said, I think the first thing I would ask the board, and I would want an opinion from everybody on the board, is we initially decided to do an internal search based on some feedback that we got from the chief about the succession plan that he's had in place. He's had 2 lieutenants that, that he felt were qualified to assume the chief's position based on what he's been doing, working with them over the years. So my first question is, based on the interviews that we had last week, are we comfortable with that we've done enough of a search internally, and is there a need for us to go beyond that? So I would ask for some input on that particular issue, because I think you know, then the next step, then we'll decide the next step. I think it logically follows, you know, this kind of a path. Are we happy with what we've seen? Do we feel like, you know, either, you know, we can pick a candidate from the two and we've done our job, or do we feel like we need to go beyond that? So I would go right down the line. Gary?
I am fine with the way things are moving along. I feel that, yes, we had two fine applicants.
Good. Still?
Agreed, we have two fantastic candidates, so I don't think we need to go outside.
Okay. Steve?
Agreed.
Okay, and that, I concur that also.
Likewise.
Okay. So that being said, of the two candidates, we both, I'm sure everybody has their notes, and if you want to refer to your notes, I think I would open the discussion on where people are after the interviews. You know, how'd your scoring come out? Are we ready to go ahead and make a recommendation tonight to one of the candidates to, you know, as a conditional employment offer based on us working out a contract? So I would open that to the floor. You know, again, I'll also render my opinion at some point. Gary?
Just to throw something out as a general, we've got this scoring thing that we got from Mike, and both applicants on mine were in the 90s. I just didn't know how that might compare to others. If you wanted to talk about that perhaps at all. Or anything.
I mean, I'll share mine. If I mean, I had total, after, you know, looking at it, I had one candidate with a ranking of at an 8.5. I did it based on that. So if you want to call that 85, right? And I had the other individual at 9 to 9.5. So, and both are in the good to excellent category, in which I had stated right from the beginning. We had two real good candidates. There was some things for me that, again, I don't want to dominate this discussion by any means, but there was a couple of things that were differentiators for me personally. So, you know, being the chair, I don't want to go first.
No, mine were, I guess, similar. Both were in the good to excellent category, and I'd say then that if we're all there, that also speaks for keeping within house. I mean, that we rated them at that.
That high, right? Agreed. So, Stu, we were on the same lines. Where were you at?
Yeah, I had a little bit more of a dichotomy on that, you know, a little bit bigger spread, but two good candidates, and you know, I'm comfortable making a decision tonight.
Okay. Steve?
I'm comfortable proposing
Okay.
a decision.
All right. And Phil, I know you watched all the...
Yeah, well, I wasn't there. It was hard to gauge in terms of body language and stuff. But I think that first of all, I was impressed with the interview. So you guys asked some really tough questions, and I thought we really did a very thorough job of getting down to both long-term strategic type questions as well as tactical everyday. And I think those were some tough questions. The only thing I know, you guys all sound like you're ready to make a decision. If I had my way and I was the only one on this board, I would like to speak with a few of the other officers to make sure that, you know, the decision that I make is the right decision based on some discussions with that. But that's just my opinion. I'd be happy if this board decides to make a decision tonight. I would absolutely go along with making a decision.
And one general comment about the questions. We originally thought we were going to get to maybe 8 or 10 questions, and we ended up getting through to almost 30 of them, I think.
We got to most of them.
So we were I think the whole process went really well. I think we were high achievers that night, and so were the candidates. But our fear was that we had way too many questions, and we were only going to get to 8 of them. So I thought that worked out well. So, so that being said, I think it's probably just time for us to disclose which candidate we're in favor of. So, I mean, do you want to go alphabetically, or how do you want to do this?
I mean, you're looking at me if.
No, I'm looking at everybody. I don't mean to just look at you, Gary.
You know, I
Sorry.
watched the interview again on YouTube, which I've learned how to do.
Okay.
I rated them before, and as I watched them, I actually improved a couple on each candidate.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, they were very close, but my rating went what my feelings were that night when they walked out of here, and so I would put one vote for Dave Thompson.
Okay. Okay. Stu?
I would go the other way. My vote would swing to Lieutenant Cudmore.
I'm going to agree with Stu on that. I thought they both interviewed very well, and they both had a lot of pluses. I think I kind of targeted a couple of concerns I had with each. One was Lieutenant Thompson's involvement with the budget and level of involvement in recent, and one was Lieutenant Cudmore's ability to and willingness to delegate. So I think they had a lot of pluses, but they also had some concerns that were worth delving into. I was convinced they'd both do a great job. I really wasn't like, I don't think we could make a mistake, quite honestly. It was a matter of how they, and the,
we'd be in good hands with either.
I guess in the end, if I looked at their experience overall, but specifically the most recent experience, it seemed to me that Lieutenant Cudmore had almost been going through like a chief in training process where he was just doing a lot of the stuff that the chief does. And that's not a comparison of capabilities, that's more a comparison of direct experience over the last few years. And not that they both haven't covered a number of different things. I think one other turning point is that they both acknowledge the shortfall of one officer right now in terms of headcount. But Lieutenant Cudmore came to the table with a solution, which I thought was another plus for me. And he also, again, my concern of his ability and willingness to delegate, he answered it to my satisfaction during the interview. And I also thought a slight edge, and again, it's an edge, it's a slight edge on communication. Because I think we've grown accustomed to very good communication in this town. So I want to say again, too, we're very lucky in Georgetown to have two amazing lieutenants like that. And both would be great candidates, but I did have to go give the edge to Lieutenant Cudmore based on those impressions.
Okay.
Phil, comfortable?
Yeah, I'll say this. I've had an opportunity to work pretty closely with the two gentlemen over the last few years, actually 6 years. And I think two very unique individuals who bring different talent to the table. And I would just say from the experience that I've had working with both of them, I think they both are capable and willing and able to do the mission at hand. However, it is a tough decision, but I would strongly vote in favor for Lieutenant Cudmore to be our next chief as well.
And and I'll echo a lot for what Steve had to say about both candidates, great candidates. I don't think we'd go wrong with either. But for me, I think the differentiator was Lieutenant Cudmore came to the table with a plan and kind of had a vision already for how he would manage the department. I think for me, again, personally, and it's a very tough decision. It's not a very easy decision. You have two candidates that have given over 60 years or 55 years of service to the town. But, we were elected to make decisions, and, that's our job. And we wouldn't want to see anybody's feelings, be hurt by this. And it's not a knock on either candidate. Again, I've worked with both officers, both lieutenants. And for me, the differentiator was the vision, the knowing, this is if I'm chief, this is what I'm going to do to solve the issue of the extra officer and the SRO. And I think for me also a little bit of the FBI, having that FBI academy, I think put Don Cudmore ahead on my sheets. Again, but please no knock on Lieutenant Thompson at all. I think he's a great guy, great officers, given a lot to the town. And so hasn't Lieutenant Cudmore. But we're paid to make the tough decisions.
We are? We get paid?
We get paid zero.
Oh, okay.
We get paid zero to make
I didn't know
these
we got paid.
Yeah. So I'm also on my candidate would be Lieutenant Cudmore at this particular point. So any other discussion around the candidates that anybody wants to bring up?
No, I my answer was short, but I echo everything both of you have said. Strategic vision in my decision-making process was critical, probably the most important. The history, I think, was fantastic for both. Both have contributed an incredible amount of time and loyalty and dedication. Lieutenant Cudmore, I just saw with the solution on the officer, the being able to add an officer, his plan that he brought to the table, and then just the history there as far as Mr. Cudmore, Lieutenant Cudmore has literally been through every square inch of that organization, has been physically through every square inch of that organization, and instrumental in making it what it is today. So that's really where my decision was made.
Can I just throw one more thing out there, Mr. Chair? Is that I guess I don't know the person who's not selected. I don't know what their career plan or vision is, but I would hope that the new chief, with the support of selectmen of the select board, would work towards creating a good position, a good situation for the person not selected. And obviously, it's up to the chief to run his department. But the hope would be not to gain a chief and lose a lieutenant, if it's feasible.
Right.
It would be to create a situation where it is still very positive, because both of these men are tremendous assets to Georgetown. And so I would definitely pledge my commitment to support however we could make that happen. Because I just...
And I think they've both been working together for a long time, so.
I agree.
And good point. Absolutely. I mean, the support's there, particularly, I think from this board with the department, and no, I think that's a good point.
Yeah. And, again, they're obviously they've worked very closely together, and we would hope that relationship continues to be a fruitful relationship for the residents of Georgetown and for the agency. So,
yeah.
And I'm sure that that's the case. I didn't see, I'm sure there's no animosity there. We get paid to make tough decisions, and this is the decision. So anyway, all right. So I crafted some language around the motion, and I didn't put any names in it. I just wanted to be prepared so that I get it right. So if somebody wants to make that, there's no names in it. It's just the motion. So I had it right. The next step.
I move to make a conditional offer of employment to Lieutenant Cudmore for the position of Chief of Police for the Georgetown Police Department, subject to successfully completed contract negotiations.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second.
Mike, are there any amendments is that sufficient?
That's sufficient.
And again, I had asked Mike for this in anticipation
Okay.
that we would be making a decision, and if we weren't, I was just gonna file it, but I just wanna make sure I got the language right. So that's the
You'll
process.
do an official appointment upon signing of the...
Right, that's fine. I just want to make sure we had the...
And so next steps are to bring an executive session, work through a contract that we can present to Lieutenant Cudmore, and work those negotiations in executive session, and then when we have an agreement, we'll make a formal presentation, and the contract will become public, right, Mike?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the next steps on all this. Okay. Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, unanimous. Very good. So we'll have to be in touch with Lieutenant Cudmore. I'm sure, I'm sure both candidates are probably watching. So I'll reach out to both candidates and speak with Lieutenant Thompson, and also speak with Lieutenant Cudmore. And then we'll get to work right away. So we have some work to do. All right. Any other new business that we missed tonight?
Reminded that election is tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, yeah, that's important. Election is tomorrow, polls open at? 7 a.m., close at? 8 p.m. So, please, this is at the Pembroke School. This is a primary for the federal side, but it's also our actual election. So please, let's get the turnout high, and everybody run by the Pembroke School and do your civic duty. So. That being said, our next
meeting is next Monday.
Yeah, next Monday night, May 6th, there will be a 6 o'clock Selectmen meeting in the I think that's the cafeteria room. Is that the
home
rec.
whatever.
I don't
Home
know.
economics.
I think they've
As
moved around
posted.
what-
Are we saying that
As
politically
posted.
correct now, home
I don't
economics?
know.
It's a cooking
Am I gonna get in
classroom,
trouble?
but I think it's
There you
been
go.
changed to a science room.
Okay.
Oh, okay, all right, so,
Somewhere in the
Probably
building.
domestic science or something.
oh, yeah, please,
Oh, there you
I'm
go.
just dating myself, please.
Domestic
I
engineering.
can hear it now, I'm gonna be in big trouble.
Directions will be posted.
Yeah,
so
directions.
We'll all get
Yeah, yeah.
there.
Follow the arrows.
Follow the
steps.
follow the
There
arrow.
you go. All right, so,
Mr. Chair, one point, just future, I know we were talking about the financial report from the
DOR.
DOR, thank
Yep,
you.
next meeting.
Obviously, we'll be taking that up, and
Mhm.
there's a lot in there, so looking forward to tackling that one next.
yeah, I saw you going through it a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I've been reading it,
Okay.
taking lots of notes.
And then,
Smoke coming from your head.
also, because we will not be on TV next week, town meeting is, oh no, that is the May 6th town meeting, yeah, okay. Tomorrow's the election, May 6th town meeting, so. All right, so that's it. I don't think we have any other business for the night, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Good night, everybody. All right.